American Enterprise Institute scholar and Fox News contributor, and Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst and co-host of The Five. Gentlemen, welcome. Great to have you here.
Good to be with you, Martha.
This is a major issue. It's several times credit card debt in this country, and people are starting to pay more attention to this. Juan, what did you think of what Mitch Daniels' approach? I said they called him the Blade in the Bush administration. He's a good cost cutter, and he's really, I think, setting an example that a lot of other universities are going to have to take a look at.
Oh, I think he's innovative, and hats off to him. That's the kind of thinking that we need from our educators, and especially in higher ed, because the costs are becoming prohibitive for so many families. But I would particularly point out to working and poor families, it's almost to the point where, given the scandals that you referenced at the top of the broadcast, Martha, that people feel they can't get in the game unless they are cheating. And that is just corruption at a level that affects us as a society, not just the educational product, which is so important, but I think it affects the way that we view each other and whether or not we can trust our institutions.
Yeah, it is sort of it's definitely a seller's market, Mark.
Yeah.
And you get into it, you turn over your hard-earned money is money, and every year the cost goes up, and it's like, oh well, college is very expensive, and we're building all these new buildings and all of that. What's your take?
Well, I agree 100% with Juan, and look, what's at stake here is the American dream, literally. And I hope that this is an issue that we can take on in a bipartisan way, the way liberals and conservatives and Trump administration and Democrats came together on criminal justice reform, because the stakes are so high, particularly for disadvantaged communities in this country. And the problem we're facing is that tuition for room and board and tuition in colleges has increased since 1985 at 4 times the rate of regular inflation.
Yeah, and you know what I can't get? I mean, now everybody, things that used to be doubles are quads.
Yeah.
So, you show up with your kids and all their stuff, and oh, well, you're going to be, it's a quad. It's incredible. It's like it's shrinking. I can't figure it out. But I want to play something that Tucker Carlson said last night. He did a big piece on this last night, and he's talking about the down the road impact that this debt burden puts on people. Watch this.
Unable to afford homes, millennials are getting married later and less often. They're also having fewer kids. It's not because they don't want children. According to Gallup, the percentage of Americans who want children has not changed in 25 years, and yet fewer children are being born. Thanks in part to rising debt levels, America's middle class cannot replace itself.
Juan, what do you think about that?
I think that's right. And what's interesting to me is this is part of a dialogue that Tucker has started about exactly, are we serving the American middle class as a society? Are we looking out for that middle class and preserving what Mark called the American dream? And I think that's the critical question. Let me just emphasize something here. I noticed that when we talk about a lot of the money from the federal government for student loans, a surprising amount, Martha, goes to people who are going to these schools that pop up online because they want to be a nurse or they want to learn how to be a mechanic. And the schools are not prepared to help them with remediation from the fact that they didn't get a good education, sufficient education on the elementary and secondary level to complete it. So they leave school, they're not the nurse, they're not the mechanic, but they have the debt.
It's terrible.
And that is crippling.
And I couldn't agree more. And that actually brings me to my next topic, which is the outrage that was expressed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, because only 7, I believe it was, African-American students were accepted to Stuyvesant. So, cities across America now have these charter schools. These are long, these are honored institutions in New York City that have been here a long time. Very, very hard to get into. But Marc Thiessen, what is the problem here? Why do you think it is that only 7 black children got the spots that were more than 800 spots?
Yeah, that's less than 1%. I mean, it's an outrage, and it's an indictment of the system. But the fact of the matter is, what people don't understand is that unlike these colleges where you have, there's discretion in who gets in, and you can buy off your way. To get into Stuyvesant, there's only one way to get into Stuyvesant. You have to ace an entrance exam. So it's purely based on merit. And so the problem is that this New York City public school system is failing Black and Hispanic children to the point that they are not able to ace that exam to the point that they can get into Stuyvesant. So it's an indictment of the education system in New York. And so Mayor de Blasio, what he wants to do is he wants to scrap the entrance exam. Lowering the standards and getting rid of the merit-based system is not the right way to do it. What we have to do is reform the public school system in New York so that underprivileged kids can get, so you have parental choice in education, so they can go to the same schools as the rich kids. So we have more public charter schools.
I got to go, but I want to give Juan a last crack at that before we do. Juan?
Yeah.
So I'm a kid who grew up in Brooklyn. I got into some of these selective schools, and I'm just so pleased to hear Marc say what he said, because I think there's an opportunity here for people who will care about education and say what's going on in some of these schools is wrong. And it's not to be said, oh, we're going to hurt the rich families and they're going to leave the public schools. Hey, look, I think it's 2/3 of the kids in New York City public schools are minority kids. And you can see that they can't compete at the highest level. Something's very wrong, folks.
And Mayor de Blasio had a $700 million program to reform the school system, and it resulted in only 25% of those schools making the measure that would put them off the list of the worst schools. So, I mean, throwing money at the problem is not necessarily the answer.
We need Mitch Daniels. We need Mitch Daniels for the public schools. There we go.
Let's send him to New York.
I think you're right. Thank you, guys. Great to see you both.
Nice to see you.
Take care.
So breaking tonight, Robert Mueller's investigation into Russia